So let me start today's talk with the respects of the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So for today's talk, I thought to talk about samma sankappa, or the right intention. So samma sankappa which you all are familiar when we sort of go through the list of the Noble Eightfold Path. It's the second item of the Noble Eightfold Path. So samma sankappa usually translates into English as right intention, or right aspiration, or right resolve, right aim, and right thoughts as well. So the term sankappa has that meaning of a little bit of the volition, the will, the aim, or the intention. We are sort of you intend to do something, you are inclining towards something, and not just the will itself, but you have thoughts. You with the thinking. Your thinking has that sort of a quality of, I wanted to sort of practice like this. I want to incline mind towards this sort of a quality, these sort of qualities. So, right intention, or the right thoughts, the samma sankappa, is the second, as I said. Before the samma sankappa, the what comes first? The right view. The right view. The view is very important. That's why it comes first in the Noble Eightfold Path. There are a few suttas. Lord Buddha says the view comes first. Because of the view, the rest will line up according to what the view one has. So the right view, the view in general, is very important. So what is right view in Buddhism? We hear about this right view. So if you look at the suttas, you see that there are like two tiers, so to speak, of view, the right view. Traditionally, we would explain it as something like something mundane and something supramundane, that sort of categorization. In the suttas, you see this term kamma sakata sammaditthi, which comes first. Kamma sakata, that's the two terms sort of put together. Kamma sakata means the kamma is mine. Kamma is one's, it belongs to oneself, like sort of a meaning. Saka, like the sakkaya ditthi, means like something to do with the self view. So kamma sakata sammaditthi, Lord Buddha says there are like few things Lord Buddha means by kamma sakata sammaditthi, which comes first compared to the supramundane, or like more like a transcendental sammaditthi. The first one is there is a meaning to dana. The dana, giving dana, it is an important thing. If you give eventually you will receive. The dana as a principle is important. So that's the first point of samadhi. And there is the actions have consequences. The karma, basically. If you do good karma, you will receive good fruit of it. If you do bad karma, you will receive bad fruits. So likewise, karma is important. Like the karma vipaka, the belief in karma vipaka is important. So that's the second. The third one is, yes, it is the rebirth. There is this, there's a life after this. So that's very essential too. So people have sometimes doubts about these things, because after we die, okay, what's happening? Yeah, sure, we don't remember anything, or sometimes you might, if it, especially if you're born in a different than a human, more like a deva. They will remember actually what you did, and things like that. So in general, it is essential to have faith, have a sort of give it the benefit of doubt, and accept it for the time being, until you sort of get the real conviction that there is rebirth. So rebirth is important. The accepting that the fact that this is not the only life, because it makes a big difference. If there is no samsara, if it is just this life, well, then there are, we will live our lives in a different way than practicing sometimes. But there is this bigger picture. Then we have to think about that as well. So the rebirth is another part of it. And there are these beings. The fourth one. There's these beings who are born spontaneously, like devas or petas, the beings in hell realms, likewise. So being born spontaneously is possible. So that's also part of the right view at the beginning. So the beginner's right view, because beginners doesn't mean that they are like, they are like kindergarten kind of a stuff. It is very essential. It's fundamental. That's why we call beginners. So yes, so there are these beings spontaneously born, and then the parents, the gratitude to parents, the recognizing the importance of parenthood, having parents, have the gratitude. So that is also included. And lastly, it is that there are monks, there are nuns, and the samana and the brahmana, that's the original term. So there are samanas, there are monastics, there are monks and nuns who understands, who practice well, who understand something we don't understand, or something someone who's beginner to Dhamma wouldn't understand, or who would understand the bigger picture than a normal person, and they will preach that to us. So that sort of a belief, that sort of a attitude, or that sort of thinking will bring you even to a place like here, or sort of listen to Dhamma anywhere, because we have this fundamental thinking that there are a lot of things I don't know or I need to learn. So therefore, I will listen to Dhamma. So as a Buddhist, in a Buddhist country, we take that fact for granted. But imagine, back then there weren't any Buddhists. So, but how people should relate to the sasana. So they need to see that there are people actually who understood things than us. So the foremost person is Lord Buddha. That's Lord Buddha is referred here. So and the rest of the monks and nuns. So that's also important. So these. So that's basically the fundamental right view, the Kamma Sakata Samaditi. And if I briefly mention, okay, what's the transcendental right view? That's the Four Noble Truths. We are familiar with that as well. Essentially, suffering is there, it's inevitable, it is there, we have seen it. And tanha, the attachment, leads to suffering. That's the cause of suffering. And if we move away from that tanha, that attachment, the suffering will cease. That's the dukkha nirodha. And there is a path to practice that. That's the Noble Eightfold Path. So that's more like supramundane or transcendental right view, which is sort of which comes again and again in the suttas. Lord Buddha defines right view as Four Noble Truths. You see that a lot. So essentially, these views set the backdrop. Set the background that, okay, what's coming, as a Buddhist, what should be, what should we be thinking? Now, the right thoughts. Now, if I explain what the right thoughts are, now in the suttas it says there are these three types of right thoughts. Nekkhamma sankappa, the thoughts of renunciation or letting go. That's the first one. And thoughts of avyapada, which is thoughts of non-ill will. And the thoughts of sankappa, avihingsa, which is non-harm, like harmlessness. So now, in Mahacattarasika Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, there are these interesting bits and pieces you can find about this Noble Eightfold Path in general. It's a sutta which says that the right view follows, it precedes everything. And further it says that right thoughts actually accompanied or so the Pali term is anuparidhavanti. So there are some other dhammas which sort of goes along with right thoughts, the samma sankappa. There are sammaditi and samma vayama and samma sati. So again, it is referred to the path factors. So when it comes to samma sankappa, the right thoughts, it's not alone. It's not something isolated. It is sort of connected with sammaditi, the right view, and samma vayama, the right effort, and samma sati. So I will explain it further, actually, what this means. Another point actually, Mahachattarasika Sutta mentions is that no, actually this is not in Mahachattarasika, I'm sorry. So this is I think Vedal, one of the Vedala suttas, where about Dhammadinna actually. This nun Dhammadinna, she was asked these questions and she replies. So, in a Noble Eightfold Path, we can separate those path factors into Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. Now, Samma Ditti and Samma Sankappa belongs to the Panya aspect of it. So, if we sort of categorize, into these three, Samma Ditti and Samma Sankappa is more like the wisdom aspect of the Noble Eightfold Path. So, Samma Sankappa is not just this path factor. When we hear about the Noble Eightfold Path, that okay, the Samma Ditti, which is very important. You hear about that a lot. And then comes the Samma Sankappa. You sort of briefly go through, okay, the Nekkhamma, Avyapada, and Avihingsa, and eventually, you forget actually Samma Sankappa altogether. At least in my mind, sometimes it is there, but somehow it's little kind of like this dangling sort of path factor. Sometimes, we recognize it is very important, but somehow don't know how to sort of relate to it. Now there are these bojjhangas. Bear with me. I'm sort of covering a little bit of a theoretical ground here. So, in how many bojjhanga dhammas? There are 37, right? So, in the bojjhangas, you see, okay, there are these 8 path factors, and there are these 4 iddhipadas, and 4 efforts, the samma padana, and 5 indriyas. There are so many sort of categories, lists in this bojjhanga dhammas, which is sometimes like very difficult to sort of even remember. I mean, including myself. Sometimes I'm bad at remembering lists myself. I confess. So if you look at the 37 bojjhangas, you see many similar factors. These similar qualities occurs again and again and again. One mentioned in the Indriya also appears in the Bala, things like that. Something in the Magga, the Eightfold Path again appears in the Bojjhangas, things like that. You see these things sort of reoccur. So one of these lists has actually this list called 5 Indriyas, or 5 spiritual faculties. So, if I go through the 5 faculties, what are the 5 faculties? Saddha, Viriya, Sati, Samadhi, and Panya. Saddha being the confidence aspect of it. Viriya is of course the effort. The Sati is the mindfulness. Samadhi, of course, and Panya. We know these terms, but I'll translate it as much as I can. But it'll be sometimes easy for some people if I leave it in Pali. So 5 indriyas. Now these 5 indriyas again occurs as 5 balas, and sometimes in different lists as well. Why is this? Now, this is not sort of directly related to the topic I'm talking today, but I would like to think that these these categories. If we so when we discuss the Dhamma, when we sort of learn Dhamma, when we listen to Dhamma, we hear certain teachings in terms of the Eightfold Path. Sometimes if we listen to like a talk about the Iddhipadas, you can see the Dhamma sort of summarized and sort of presented in the form of 4 Iddhipadas, or the 4 what's the translation of the Iddhipadas? Like 4 I'll leave it as it is. And sometimes if we want to discuss the effort aspect of it, it'll be presented as the 4 Vayamas, Samapadanas rather. And sometimes you can discuss the path, you can discuss the practice as 5 spiritual faculties, sometimes as 5 powers, spiritual powers called Bala, and finally the Bojjhangas. Again, so I'd like to think these are like different sort of a paradigm is like a more sort of a very serious term, but it's something like that. It's a different way of seeing it, different sort of a you slice it in a different angle and you see it like this. If you want to explain it as a path, as something like you can clearly take up and practice, that is Noble Eightfold Path. If some person actually asks that, Lord Buddha has to say, okay, this is the path. If someone asks, how about what are the most important processes in this practice of Dhamma, then Lord Buddha would say, okay, Saddha, Viriya, Sati, Samadhi and Panya. Because these are Indriyas. Indriya, as you can imagine, like in Sinhala also, what is an Indriya? It's like an organ, very important task it performs, So if one of these the organs sort of knocked out, like sort of something happened, what happened? Then sort of the whole health sort of endangered by that. So these things are like very important sort of centers. Like if I talk according to the body, okay, certain organs are like very essential, like a center of that particular bodily function. Likewise, when it comes to Dhamma, there are these 5 Indriyas. There are these 5 main organs, or like centers, if you like, you can sort of name. First is Saddha. Like, okay, in order to start the whole thing, all this practicing Dhamma and all these things, even to come here, you need to have some sort of a meaning, a sense of meaning. I want to do this. I've been doing it. It's good for me. I'm going to sort of continue like that. And sometimes you are more inspired than that. I will go and get my meditation back again. Things like that. So the Saddha, it has this sort of a sense of meaning, the sense of inspiration, sense of confidence, sense of I can do it. Likewise, sometimes the sense that confidence can be confidence in you, the confidence in these samanas and brahmanas Lord Buddha talked about. There are samanas and brahmanas I worthy of listening to. That's Lord Buddha as the foremost. So these things actually we can categorize them into this faculty called saddha, which is very important. So if we know actually this is very important, maybe we can focus on that, right? That's the reason we give names to these things, not just to sort of enumerate these lists and how about like writing exam paper or something. No, not for that. So saddha, and then because of the saddha, what happens? The virya, the effort follows. Yeah, I believe in it. I have confidence. Therefore, I'll do it. I'm getting on with it. Saddha, virya, sati. Then the sati aspect also comes, and then the samadhi and the panya. So instead of sort of explaining it, explaining the five indriyas now, I'll sort of come back to my original theme. So these five, if you look at these five indriyas, most of them actually supported by samma sankappa. Now earlier on, I referred to this sutta says that samma sankappa also goes along with sammaditthi, samma vayama, and samma sati. So that means, like, that's why we have these different lists. In certain lists we can't capture that aspect. So the five indriyas are there mentioned like that because you need to sort of convey that aspect of the path or aspect of the Dhamma, in those terms. But samma sankappa, like separately, as a way of sort of practicing, it's mentioned in the path. But these things sort of intermingle, they sort of overlap all the time. So 37 bojjhangas doesn't mean that all these 37s are like standalone, like separate 37 dhammas. These are like, they overlap a lot. So these things is powered by samma sankappa, which is sort of a like it's like a secret ingredient, like hidden underneath, that we're supposed to develop in order to arouse these qualities. Because we know that saddha should be there, we know sankappa as a path factor, but how can we sort of connect these two? Because seemingly, if you do samma sankappa, the saddha, virya will come up. Because that's the other sutta says. Sankappa goes with the virya, sankappa goes with the ditthi, sankappa goes with sati as well, which is very interesting. Now, if I explain a little bit more about the sankappa. Now, okay, those three things, that non-attachment or the nekkhamma sankappa, or the non-ill will, or the non-harm, sort of these three ways of thinking, if I put it like that, these things encourage you to go away from attachment, the tanha. Now, the tanha, you can see, mainly can manifest in those, in these three ways. Like you have an expectation, things should be like this. I should have this. I should get that. Something like that. Then that is basically the opposite of nekkhamma sankappa. What's the opposite of nekkhamma sankappa? Is the kama sankappa. That's sort of anchored in this, the five sensory realms, things in the worldly sense. So that's kama sankappa. So that's, you can see directly, that's tanha there. Then how about the thoughts of ill will, which is like Vyapada Sankappa, not the Avyapada, but the Vyapada, which is ill will now, the opposite of the Avyapada. That means that, these things shouldn't be here. It shouldn't be this hot. You know, one way or the other. We have these opinions. We have this sort of, like we annoy over stuff. We have an opinion. Things turn out to be something. Otherwise. So the annoyance come up. This particular, this affliction comes up, the mental affliction. So if we practice non-ill will, that means we accept things as they are. Like for Nekkhamma Sankappa, the sense of letting go, letting letting go of that attachment, letting go of that tanha. That's what it means. For non-ill will, it's accepting. Again, the same thing, said in a different term. You accept it. You're not sort of fighting with it. You're not sort of arguing with it. It is what it is. It's part of life. What do you expect? So when you think like that, it's part of life. If you have a body, you feel cold, you will feel hot. The both are sort of normal for a person who has a body. So that means that leads to non-ill will, not just like a gross ill will towards a person or a thing, but this tiny little bit of things. That those things are more obvious, but even little things like like little aches and pains, the weather, or things like that. Yeah, accepting it, letting things be. And the third one, non-harming. Why do we harm? Why do we think harming others? Mostly out of, again, like attachment. Attachment of, things should be like this or it shouldn't be like this. Some sort of expectation. Once again, you're sort of frustrated, you're angry, and these things can happen. So non-harming, yes, non-harming towards other sentient beings, for sure. That's sort of like the more straightforward meaning. Non-harming towards, like, non-harming again means like, you're not controlling, you're not trying to sort of control out of sort of annoyance, out of ill will. Because there's this aspect of controlling. You have, try to sort of change, make things differently. So let's sort of let's distract this and do something else. That's also like harming. So all in all, craving or the attachment or the tanha is underneath all these things. So when we practice samma sankappa, that means we are going against tanha, against the grain. So right view, as I said, right view does mention about all these sort of the fundamental right views, the right view of the list I've sort of mentioned. And then the Four Noble Truths as well. How all this suffering happens. You have some idea. If you have some idea, then you start to work on it. In order to work, you have to think first. So the ditti comes first. Then your sort of a mindset, your sort of thinking patterns, you have to change. So that's essentially the Samma Sankappa. If I summarize what the Samma Sankappa means, that life is suffering, there is suffering in one's life. And attachment is the cause for all that. Because of the attachment, the samsara happens. We go from one birth to another. Because the attachment is like a very big kind of issue. Of course, the avijja also at the background. Avijja means that you don't see them, see things as they are. So we know the karma is there, the bad karma and the good karma, the rebirth and all these things. We have a sort of a bigger picture, and we know the suffering is there. Attachment is the problem, leads to that thing called suffering. And if I move away from tanha, that's the key, that's the way forward. So that's essentially the what the samma sankappa is. Now, there's one sutta in the Anguttaras. I'm sure you have, some of you have heard of this sutta, the Mahapurisa Vitakka, Anuruddha Mahapurisa Vitakka Sutta. So this happened one time when Anuruddha was living in seclusion, and his meditation going very well, and while he was in seclusion, he started to think these things, like so if I list the things he contemplated, the first thing he thought, this Dhamma is for one who is frugal, content with little. Apicchata. Apicchata is the Pali term, right? Alpechchata, you hear the term in Sinhala. So this Dhamma is for one who is alpechcha, not mahiccha. Mahiccha means the opposite of it. There are a lot of things, they aspire to have, to be, and a lot of things in their mind. So apicchata, and then santuttita, this is the second one. Santuttita again overlaps with the alpechchata. Santuttita means you try to be content with what you have, whatever you have, whatever the situation you are in. It's not just physical belongings or physical requisites you possess, but the situation you are in. So santuttita, it covers another sort of a territory, although it sort of overlaps with the alpechchata. And this Dhamma is for who is practicing viveka, time to time. We need to have that break, that's why even we do this sort of a day-long retreats, weekend retreats, by the Ajahn Brahm Society. Give the practitioners, especially for lay practitioners, to come together and practice, take a break. So that's essential, that is important. And maybe time to time you'll be able to go for a little longer retreat, like a week or 10-day retreat or even more. That is essential, that is important. So this Dhamma is for one who believes in viveka, who practices viveka, the seclusion, the bodily seclusion and the mental seclusion as well. Because the bodily seclusion means you are away from people now, you are alone. Time to time we come together, but we are living in our small sphere or small bubble that we try to sort of maintain it, without engaging much talk or anything. So that's the bodily seclusion. But there is another seclusion, the seclusion from kilesas, the seclusion of attachments also, because the mind is still sort of pulling you towards here and there. So that's also important eventually. but the bodily seclusion comes first. Then you can isolate the rest. So, yeah, person who practices viveka, that's who, Dhamma is for them. And the fourth one is that the person who arouses energy, that's, the Dhamma is for them. You need to get the virya going. You need to get some sort of effort. That's how you ended up here today. There may be many things you could do. Today's Sunday, so it's the only sort of a holiday. Some of you have. So, but despite that, you put effort and decided to come. No, I'm going to come. At least, reserve this day for my practice. So, person who has energy, that's very important for a person to practice Dhamma. And the fifth one, person who has sati, the mindfulness, is also very important for practicing Dhamma. And the sixth is the samadhi. You need to have samadhi in order to practice Dhamma properly. And then the seventh one is panya. Venerable Anuruddha thought, this Dhamma is for people who are wise. We need to have some sort of a panya in order to come and practice like this. Give the importance, because the panya, of course, which related to the ending of samsara, understanding this human suffering, not this worldly sort of panya of sort of worldly sort of subjects, but how my mind works. What should I what should I prioritize over anything else? Things like that. If you understand that a little, that means that's a sign of panya. So in order to start practice, actually we need to have some panya. That's for sure. So that was the seventh thought of Venerable Anuruddha. So he was thinking like this, and Lord Buddha saw this thing. So he was living somewhere else, but from his mind, with his mind, he saw what the Venerable Anuruddha was thinking, and he basically talked to Venerable Anuruddha, if I remember correctly. I think he approaches to Anuruddha physically, or he talked to him through the mind. He basically praises what Venerable Anuruddha said. Yes, these seven thoughts, these seven way of thinking, these are Maha Purisa Vitakka, he said. That's the thoughts of a great man, Lord Buddha says. So Lord Buddha sort of gave the name of those ways of thinking, the Maha Purisa Vitakka. And he went along and he added another important thing, though. Lord Buddha said, this Dhamma is for a person who are not indulging the proliferation or the proliferating mind. Now, Samma Sankappa, that's very skillful, that is very meaningful, that is encouraged. But if it boils down to proliferation, that is, whatever that means, that's not wholesome. Lord Buddha doesn't encourage us to engage in proliferation. That means you think without a principle, at the background. You are not thinking in terms of Dhamma. sometimes that sort of thinking might lead to your own suffering, fears and anxiety, guilt, and things like that. So that's clearly indicates that proliferation in action. So samma sankappa. So that's the backstop. That's the other end of it. You don't go further than that. If you go beyond that, that means proliferation. So it must be very important. Otherwise, it's very sort of according to this context, we can understand why Lord Buddha mentioned that, include the non-proliferation as the eighth factor of these thoughts of a great person. So that sutta also summarizes what should we be thinking. So what sort of the ways of thinking we should be doing. So all these things possible because of your belief, your view on certain things. If you believe in rebirth, if you believe in the dana and all this sort of giving, all the charity sort of thing, if you believe in the karma vipaka, if you believe in rebirth, if you believe in there are these sort of other beings, other realms as well. Sense of spontaneity that's what it sort of implies. These things are there, these things are real, and above all, why should I practice? Because there is this human suffering, there is this the attachment business involved, and all these the views in place. Then that kind of a thinking of letting go, thinking of non-ill will, thinking of non-harming actually makes sense. Actually, that reinforces the view you have. Ajahn Brahm used to explain this as like this three sort of like a cycle of three. So there are views. Because of the views, there are these perceptions, certain sannyas, certain sort of ideas, and because of those perceptions, there are because of certain sannyas or the perceptions, then the thoughts come to be, and thoughts again reinforces the views to perceptions, perceptions to thoughts, again views. So these things sort of like a self-reinforcing sort of a cycle. So these things work in unison. If we get the right view in place, these things make sense. And finally, I mentioned about this Noble Eightfold Path. Can be categorized into three, like the Sila aspect of it, the Samadhi aspect of it, and the Panya aspect of it. Now, Samma Sankappa and Samma Ditti are part of Panya. Now, at the beginning, the Samma Sankappa is developed because we heard about these teachings that make sense. You sort of you practice it. You sort of adapt those practices. It seems like little sort of sometimes a little slightly artificial, sometimes slightly unnatural, sometimes. But that is something we're supposed to adopt, because the wise people recommend it. Eventually, when the wisdom sort of improves, that wisdom faculty sort of mature in you, actually the right thinking itself is panya. It's a manifestation of panya. Because if you think about an Aryan, a person who really practice really well, that's how they think. Because the more the letting you go, the better. More the non-harm, the non-ill will, better. That leads to the happiness of your own and the others as well. So that's now it becomes more natural. Now the thinking itself, the right the Samma Sankappa itself is panya. So the manifestation of panya, like Ajahn Chah would put, first you follow Dhamma, then you understand Dhamma, and finally you become Dhamma. Oh, you be Dhamma. So these things has this sort of natural progression. So and one more point now. Samma Sankappa, as I quoted, goes along with the sati as well. Remember, I mentioned the Samma Sankappa works with the Sammaditthi, Samma Vayama, and Samma Sati. The Samma Vayama also I think by now it's a little clear to you that the Samma Sankappa leads to that arousing of Saddha. That Saddha leads to Virya, the energy. And now, Yonaso Manasikara, the wise attention, also greatly overlaps with the Samma Sankappa. That's also a way of sort of saying the same thing. Sometimes you hear Samma Sankappa, sometimes you hear wise attention or the Yonaso Manasikara. Sometimes you hear what? Paccavakkana Bala. That's also a term. Sometimes you see in the suttas that the contemplation power, the power of meditation and the power of contemplation. There is a sutta in the Anguttara. So in that context also, so we are referring to the same thing. Lord Buddha comes to the theme, the same thing, in a different sort of nuances. So sati is aroused because of wise attention, or the Samma, Yonaso Manasikara. So that means Samma Sankappa actually helps, that actually condition the sati in order to become the Samma Sati. Now, otherwise, sati itself, as a faculty, would not sort of powerful enough or fully equipped in order to understand the Four Noble Truths, to understand the dukkha. The sati has to have that Samma Sati aspect of it. What makes the regular sati Samma Sati is the wise attention, or the right thinking, or the right view. So if you believe in certain views, if you have certain views, the world views, and if you think along those views, eventually you will find yourself being sensitive, being mindful towards those sort of aspects. When something with regard to those views comes up, the mind will be alerted. Okay, this is I'm doing harm to another, I am being angry, I am being driven by tanha too much, things like that, because you believe that's not the path. You believe coming out of them is the path. So what you think that will set up these checkpoints in your mind. That is essentially the sati. So the samma sankappa definitely going to helpful for your sati practice as well, because these things are very much connected. So practice Noble Eightfold Path, not just one path, one part of the path. So because if you practice it as a whole, the things will fall into place. Otherwise, you will progress in a certain direction, but somehow in the long run, you need to have, you'll start to see actually with the long run, in the long haul, whether you progress or not, then you will see actually you need to have all the eight factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, you need to practice them. So I would like to conclude my talk there. So I hope my little talk helped in some way, to get your practice more and more advanced. So yes, so I would like to encourage you more, and thank you for being here. It's nice to see practitioners coming together and sort of a practice together like this. So I would like to wish you good luck with your practice. So may you all understand Four Noble Truths soon possible. Teruvan Sarana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Maybe do we have any questions, like what I just said? Do you have any quick question? Maybe like we will have like a Q&A session in the afternoon, but before you forget or something, are there any questions? Sure. Yes. That's also, in my mind, it's also a proper translation, like intention, motivation, aspiration. There was another translation actually. Ajahn Jeff also translates in a little different way. Yes, of course, the motivation also, because motivation. There is, some sankappa has that sense of motivation, and sankappa implies that you think, you actively think in those sort of lines. You're motivated to let go. You're motivated to do, go away from ill will. You're motivated to to do non-harm. So the motivation happens with thinking. If he goes back to that sutta, there are these two powers in mind. The first power is the bhavana bala. When you still your mind, the mind acquires certain power. It can do certain things with that. The mind can do certain things with that power. And there's this paccavekkhana bala, the thinking, in terms of the principles. You think, you contemplate, you do yoniso manasikara. So the motivation, just the motivation itself, not just the motivation itself, but it needs the wheels. It's not just the engine itself. It needs that wheels. The wheels, I would say, the thing, the thinking. Yes. The right view actually sets the stage, right? Yeah. You have a worldview, and you are inclined towards it, something like that. Yeah, it's sometimes these terms. if we read the suttas, we see these terms are heavily contextual. Lord Buddha says a term with a certain background. The same term sometimes occurs in different contexts as well. It can be a little confusing sometimes. It's literally the same term sometimes. The sankhara, for an instance, depends on the context. Sometimes it can be, it implies the causality of it. Because of so many causes and conditions, this thing came to be. That's one sort of a meaning of sankhara. Sometimes in certain contexts, Lord Buddha says sankhara meaning that the volition, the chetana aspect of it. So essentially, fundamentally, these things also overlap. So the context also matters. So if it is contextual, the meaning of these terms, it's sort of a very difficult to define 100%. There are like precise sort of terms. Sometimes, of course, you can, I would like to say it is more like a territory of a word rather than like a one meaning of a word. A word basically covers a certain context, a certain territory. So that's why sometimes it's so slippery. We try to sort of get a handle of that word somehow. You try to pick it up, but okay, how about this aspect of it? How about this? Why can't I essentially get the meaning? Get the whole thing. Shovel it all the thing and kind of. Why can't we sort of collect it everything? Because this ideas has like different sort of slightly different nuances, because these are connected to each other, connected to the Noble Eightfold Path, connected to other Bojjhanga Dhamma. So when we try to understand a term, that context, not just the item itself, but what's the context? What's the connection? So that also we need to understand a little. That's why it's sort of a we think that now I understand what this term means, and after a few weeks again it's kind of gone, because it's not that sort of a like scientific definition. Likewise, right? Like we have this sense, right? So because why is it so slippery? Because it has a territory rather than a pinpoint sort of thing. Yeah. When you think of not like a literal tradition but like a verbal tradition, that's what Lord Buddha explained these things. So it's not like a modern way of like a philosophy sort of presentation. Sometimes they use the terms loosely, sometimes more strictly as well. So it's good to understand what when a term used loosely. Okay, that's a loosely mentioned, and when a term explained, like meant to be like implying a more precise idea. Okay, that's like a more like a precise sort of a context. I think that there is this one sutta in the Anguttara, a person should understand what the Neyyatta teaching is, what the Nitatta teaching is. It's difficult for me to translate it, but at least I'll give you the Pali term. The Neyyatta and the Nitatta, it goes something like, okay, it's not like some teachings are like ultimate sort of a more fundamental sort of and some teachings are more like heavily contextual kind of a thing. So the ability to sort of understand Neyyatta and the Nitatta is important, because sometimes Lord Buddha says something here and some other place also he says, and it seems like little kind of conflicting. So these are like that's That's Nitatta basically, if I remember it correctly. But when Lord Buddha says Four Noble Truths or Eightfold Path, okay, that's something like a Nitatta, that's sort of a, he wants to be precise as well. So something like that, So it's very interesting. It's good to know these terms and with the context as well. Yeah. That's my long answer to your small question. So, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. We know that we always create Panchupadana skandha. How can we get this stopped? Kindly explain, Teruvan Sarnai. Okay, so yeah, it's a big topic. Now, as practitioners, what we are doing, basically what we are aspiring, is that we try to lessen our attachment to all these aspects of the Panchupadana skandha and take away that upadana aspect of it. So this Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana, I think I don't have to sort of translate, I guess. Do I have to translate it? No, right? So this phenomena, these aspects, Arahants also experience. They also have this sort of Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara and Vijnana. The difference is that they don't have any upadana towards them. There's no kind of attachment. So then we would say, we can say that they have panchaskandha, like just the five khandhas. There's no upadana towards them. So if we explain the progression, first we take away that upadana of the five khandhas, then it's no longer panchupadana khandha, it is just the panchakhandha, five khandhas. And that stage, you are an arahant, and you are still alive. So that attainment, Lord Buddha called Saupadhisesa Nibbana. So as an arahant, you experience Nibbana, but the word Saupadhisesa is attached to that. Saupadhisesa means Upadhisesa is present. Upadhisesa means, like upadi means like the stuff belongs to you. That's a kind of the literal meaning. Upadi is like possessions or sort of accessories to you. So upadi says, now the upadi is sesa. Sesa means like it's still remaining, like the shesha in Sinhala. So sa means it's like an affirmative sort of a part, affirmative particle, if I say it in grammar, in Pali. So upadhisesa is there. As an arahant, you are an arahant, but still alive. Still the upadhisesas are there. But that's Nibbana as well. Why? What are these upadhisesas? You have eyes, ears, nose, tongue, touches, and your mind. These things are with you still. You haven't passed away yet. Still with you because those are like your past karma. Those are like kind of karma vipaka. when you come, when you came to this life, you sort of attach to these things. You upadanad these 5 things. So now the upadana is gone, but the vipaka is still present until you die. Venerable Sariputta calls it as it's as if a worker, having done his work, waiting for his or her wages. The wages, in this sense, is that this nibbana, the nibbana, this thing called nibbana, after you passed away. Because still you haven't passed away, still you have a body, because you previously were attached to it, now you sort of no attachment to it. But since you have a body, you get sick. Since you have an ear, people will criticize. But since you don't have sort of any attachment to it, there won't be any sort of like anger or ill will or any other sort of emotions about it. It's just this experience. So, having 5 khandhas, not upadana, but just the 5 khandhas, that still is a problematic thing. Now, dukkha vedana, Lord Buddha sort of talks about this dukkha vedana thing once. Now, if you have a body, you feel pleasure and pain. Now the pain, he says, is like a thorn or like a pike driven into your limbs. Like let's say to your leg. So that's painful. And on top of it, you start to worry now. Your mind gets involved with it and makes it worse, or it makes it more painful. So now it is not just single dukkha, now it's like a double dukkha. Now Lord Buddha says it's as if you have driven another pike to the same place, where the original pike was. So now they are like a double dukkha here. Now, as an arahant, now that upadana towards the body, upadana towards, that means the rupa mostly, and vedana, sanya, vedana sanya, sankhara vijnana, and all these things, particularly in this case, like let's say the body and the vedana, upadana is gone. Whatever the vedana comes, he or she accepts. That's it. If you have a body, you get pain. If you have body, you get pleasure. If you have body, you get like cold or heat. What do you expect? It is what it is. That's what the body does. It's a bodily thing. If you have a body, par for the course. So that kind of attitude, no attachment at all. Still, the dukkha vedana, now the second tone is uprooted. If a bodily thing happens, it will stop at the bodily level, the physical level. There's no sort of a mental sort of like amplifying, the mental amplification of the physical thing, because there's no upadana. But as an arahant, still having a body, still troublesome. Lord Buddha says, to Venerable Ananda once, that Ananda, I don't praise even a tiny bit of bhava, tiny bit of being. He wouldn't praise, Lord Buddha says, because if bhava is there, if this being business is still there, there will be some sort of a suffering involved. He gives a little bit, kind of a little gross simile there. Even if there's a little bit, a tiny bit of feces, in your hand, it will still stink. That's what Lord Buddha simulated to the bowel, a little bit of a feces. So Panchapada Skandha has to understand, like this. So how do we get rid of, how do we sort of stop the whole thing? Okay, it's stage by stage. First, you practice, you attain arahanthood, then the upadana is gone. Then until you die, you experience this state of nibbana called saupadisesa nibbana. And after your death, you won't be coming back to any sort of a bhava. There's no sort of some strange bhava called nibbana that you sort of you'll be reborn and live happily ever after. Nibbana means in Pali, it's gone. There was a flame. Now the fuel and the other supportive conditions are gone. Therefore, the flame extinguishes. You can say a flame is gone, and people for the usual sort of the way of saying it, you say the flame is gone. But if someone asks where is the flame gone, it's to up or the down or the sideways. Where is it now? That doesn't apply. This is just a way of saying it. The flame is gone. There is no sort of a place you go and sort of live happily ever after. So, at the death of an arahant, they attain the anupadisesa nibbana instead of saupadisesa. Now, here means like no upadisesa at all. Anupadisesa nibbana. I think I was I was nearly sort of coming to like finishing answering that question though. Are there any sort of something you would like to ask on top of what I said? So yeah, I on karma.
No.
On karma. So yes, so two different nibbanas, the Savapadisesa and the Anupadisesa. Once the Anupadisesa happens, then you can technically call it as the Khanda Nirodha. There's no Khanda, the five Khandas cease to exist. So that's how I was taught by the teachers. Yes. Are there any questions you have? You can ask on top of it. Is there anything else? Yes, so are there anything else you would bring up? I'm sorry? Sure.
Persons who including I suppose the arahats, but they have similar attainment. So for the most part, has similar attainment, and all the other ones have similar attainment. But their personality differences and all the way continue to be differences and nature.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So, yeah, I'll repeat it, yeah? So this one asks that, yes, so we hear about Adipugalas, Sotapannas, until Arahats, and so are their attainments are similar to each other's, and especially their personalities and all these things. Do they converge once they become arahants? They become like this. The personalities are the same. Is that what we should expect? She asked. So. Since you mentioned about the Sotapannas, now at Sotapanna level you see, if you look at the sutras, there are at least three varieties, like three different sort of levels of Sotapanti. The first is that Ekaviji, if I mention the Pali first. So Ekaviji means you have like one seed, as if like you have like one birth remaining. After this, there's only one birth you are going for. It's kind of very close to Sakadagami, if you remember, how the Sakadagami might end, will end. But this is still the Sotapanna level, but close to Sakadagami, their minds are so pure. They're not yet Sakadagami, but a little close to that. Otherwise, there's no other way to explain it. Not great detail of why these sort of differences are, but we can sort of surmise. So, Ekabiji, like a one life remaining, and Kola. Kola is like 2, 3. Like you might go on like another 2, 3 lives. That's Kola, if I remember correctly. And there is this third category, Sattakattu Parama. That's like several lives. What the Ratana Sutta says? Sotapannas, once you're a Sotapanna, your maximum you come for 7 lifetimes. So you see, even but their general understandings, that's similar. They are seeing noble truths. The right view is completely understood by them, but the panna is not complete yet. Like it hasn't come to total completion. But the views are sort of that aspect is grown to the maximum. Now they know actually this is how you proceed. You come to the stream. Sotapanna means you come to the stream. The stream will take away, take you to the Nibbana. That's like the simile of the stream. So you see these differences sometimes. People's parami, people who have practiced before, they might sort of, get ahead than some others, things like that. So you see a difference in that regard. I remember Anand, I think one time asked, will there be any difference of these experiences, experience of liberation among arahants? Lord Buddha says no. In terms of liberation, it's nearly the same. It's the same. Even the understanding of Lord Buddha, as an arahant, Lord Buddha also as an arahant, is an arahant. It's the same liberation. understood, saw through the five khandhas, understood Anatta, realized, and thing happened. But certain aranas have more ability to explain their minds than the others. Sometimes we hear this epithet called Sivpilisimbhya, like Chaturpatisamvidha, that's a Pali term. Sivpilisimbhya, Ratan Mansen, sometimes people, you hear, right, in Ghana. That means, certain monks can, they were like capable of, and after they became arahants, after they can explain the terms, and they know thoroughly. They can sort of give more similes, more sort of analogies, and different ways of saying the same thing. Not sometimes some are not. You hear the same with the Pacceka Buddhas as well. They are Buddhas, they sort of attain by themselves, but they are not that into explaining Dhamma. But even within, these different Buddhas, Lord Buddha explains in the Vinaya, you see, when Sariputta once, he was wondering, were there any differences of the sasana of the different Buddhas? And his original question was, why certain sasanas went for a long time, and why certain sasanas didn't go that long? And he asked that question to Lord Buddha, and Lord Buddha says, certain Buddhas, they got their savakas, their disciples, to remember their teachings and set down rules and sort of organize all the teachings before they pass away, so they can carry on, from generation to generation. Certain Buddhas were more sort of, they're more like kind of a Bhekkhas, sort of equanimity, sort of like Brahm. So they weren't into sort of setting down rules and sort of they need to sort of establish this asana. So you see, even within the the Buddhahood also you see this sort of variety, because we outsiders, we usually learn these categories. Our immediate sort of thoughts would be, it looks like it's it may be across the board the same. That's why it's a good question actually. But apparently it's not the case. It's sort of individual, which is also like more natural, isn't it? Rather than sort of the straight jacket of Buddhahood or Arahanthood, and then sort of it goes on like that. It's not. It's more like natural, more ad hoc, more sort of random. But they have come to a certain level too. It's like a graph. All this person actually sort of attaining that level, but there's this fluctuation beyond that. But they are up to a certain level anyway. There's no kind of going back of that curve. It's just up there and then beyond. So you see the difference there. And even sometimes you see this is in sutras actually. Even our Lord Buddha, sometimes he says, when he is doing more meditation on sunyata, the emptiness, he uses the term sunyata viharana. Viharana means like abiding, That's how you sort of practice those days. In a certain time, you sort of practice more sunyata, something like that. So when you practice that, he says, he always, like a layperson or a monk wants to see him and, listen to some Dhamma, but he would always speak to these people the way that the conversation wouldn't go on, that quickly he wants to end and sort of dismiss these people. He uses the term uyojana patisamyutta kata. Uyojana means like get up and go. Uyojana patisamyutta kata. It's sort of okay, alright, off you go. So you see, he's Mahakarnika, he's a very well skilled teacher, but time to time he would claim his space. Time to time he says, monks, I'm going on retreat for 3 months. No, this is not something late. This is in the suttas and the Vinayas. I'll be away for 3 months. Away means like he will be living in the vicinity of these monks. But he says, no monk should approach me unless the upasthayaka, the upatthana, who brings the Dhamma to me. So he would sort of get a monk to sort of bring the Dhamma and totally leave out, the seclusion. The monk, at that time the monk should see him. And there's an incident actually, some outside monks actually, without knowing him, came to Lord Buddha, sort of, went straight and to see Lord Buddha. Lord Buddha receives them, but he sort of casually asked whether they knew that there's this sort of understanding, this sort of agreement, pact to not to see. So you see sometimes, even within the same person, sometimes you see this color to this character. Sometimes you see, actually Ajahn Nisarno pointed this out to me while we were retreat at Ajahn Brahmalis, and maybe a little bit after, I don't recall exact moment. Now in the Majjhima Nikaya, the Bhattivedanta Sutta, the sutta says that, the question is that who leads the Gosinga Salavana? The monks who are abiding, monks who gathered and living together in this beautiful piece of land, piece of forest, and this is like a little like a poetic, more kind of more like an inspirational sort of discussion. So when this question was asked, Venosaranta says, monks with wisdom actually leads the, they sort of, they lead the crowd. Singing කියන සමහරවල් ඔබ they lead, තමයි සරයි Venerable Moggallana says, monks with psychic powers leads the course of the sun. Venerable Mahakasapa says, monks with Dhutangas, these monks have these sort of specialities for them. And Venerable Mahakacharya, being a good Dhamma speaker, he says, Dhamma speakers lead the crowd. And finally, it gets to Lord Buddha to answer the question. Now, in this context, we shouldn't think that, Lord Buddha is giving the final, ultimate answer, because it's just an answer, he was asking, people's opinions. This question has many answers, it seems. People have their different sort of inclinations, they sort of perceive in that way. In the same way, Lord Buddha also answered the question, and he says, a person, a monk with a lot of virya leads the Kosala Salavana. So, Ajahn Nisarno pointed out that, to me, that it seems like, Lord Buddha had that sort of character, like the virya character. All these 6 years of ascetic practices and all these things. He must be like, you can imagine. That's his speciality, the virya. yeah, people with the virya beats, you know. So these things actually gives a little bit window of the personality of Lord Buddha. You see these things kind of scattered here and there in sutras. And one time, another like bits and pieces. I mean, I'm not answering to your question right now, but an Ajivaka, an ascetic, comes and says to Lord Buddha that, Venerable Sir, I think if someone criticizes someone, I think that he is misusing their words. It's mincha vacha. He says that. And Lord Buddha says, okay, ascetic, if you want to think like that, you think like that. It's totally sort of undercuts this sort of momentum. And this argument says, oh, it's as if someone emerging from water to the surface, struck by like a net, sort of like struck and kind of tangled by a net, like a fish net. In the same fashion, when I said this thing, Lord Buddha sort of took me with his the net of argument or speech. So then Lord Buddha says, no, Ajivaka, what I'm saying is just kusala and akusala. There is kusala and there is akusala. So his point was that, there are sometimes people, deserve a criticism. And as a teacher, as a teacher of devas and monasas, actually, it's his duty to, if it's a fair criticism, he would give it. He won't be politically correct about it. He says that because that's the ultimate compassion. It's not just sort of he's always sort of a soft tone, and sort of waiting there to spoil you or something. He can be fierce. One time, 500 monks came to see him. It is like 500 monks from Venerable Sariputta. Actually, Venerable Sariputta is their Paja. So they were living somewhere else. Like Lord Buddha and Venerable Sariputta and others, actually Venerable Mahamogalan as well, they were living somewhere else. I think it's in Migaranatha's palace. So Lord Buddha was upstairs. These monks, just arrived. They are setting aside their bowl and robes, and a bit of a talk, became like a big sort of a noise. And Lord Buddha asked, "What's that noise down there?" As if like some fishermen, came together, selling fish. And he says, "Oh, this is the Sariputta, disciples, came to pay respects to Lord Buddha after the Vassa." And Lord Buddha says, "Okay, tell them to leave. I'm not going to receive them." That's it. Then they were like, upset, and then sort of they sadly they left. He was teaching something. And this is the part 2 of that story. Then Lord Buddha asks from, now the second scene is that with Lord Buddha and Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Mahamogalan. And Lord Buddha says, okay, Venerable Sariputta, what do you think? What were you thinking when I was dismissing those monks? Venerable Sariputta says, well, I thought Lord Buddha is being, Lord Buddha is practicing upekkha, or like more kind of aloofness, He doesn't want to sort of train anyone, He's being more like upekkha. Therefore, I also should be upekkha, or I should also develop upekkha, because Lord Buddha also now in upekkha mode. And Lord Buddha criticizes him then and then. He rebukes Venerable Sariputta, knows Venerable Sariputta, that's not the way of thinking. And then he asked Venerable Mogalan, okay, Mogalan, what were you thinking? And he said, I thought Venerable Buddha, Bhante was, in an upekka sort of perception, upekka sort of a mode. Therefore he's not into sort of practicing or training these monks. Therefore, at least I should train these monks, he thought. Oh, that's the way forward, So he basically praises Venerable Moggallana for saying that. So you see, they're like foremost disciples, but the understanding, their take on certain situations are totally different. There's some sort of humanness involved, their characters, from the past. Sometimes if I have a little bit more time, I would sort of say more about Venerable Sariputta. So the beginning of the Vinaya, Venerable Sariputta, the story of Venerable Sariputta told about, which sasana survived longer than the others, which I mentioned about. So then he went to Lord Buddha and asked, and Lord Buddha said, these Buddhas were, setting down rules and things like that. The other Buddhas were like that. And then Venerable Sariputta went home and says, Bhante, he sort of invites Lord Buddha, Bhante, this is the time for you to set down rules. So according to the tradition, this is the sixth Vasa, the 6th year since Buddhahood. So it's not that long. So Venerable Sariputta already invites him to give us some rules, set down rules. And then when Lord Buddha says, no Sariputta, now it's not the time. Buddha knows, what's the time for that. It's not the time, he says. So, with different opinions, if the Buddha was the king, Venerable Sariputta is the general, but sometimes even general can't get what the king thinks. There are these sort of slight sort of different opinions you see. There are a few other places also. So you see, there's sometimes for certain situations there is sort of a clear-cut kusal, akusal sort of approach. For certain situations, more like perception. Sometimes you take up this perception, sometimes you take up this perception. A certain person can sort of, let's say Lord Buddha was dismissing people, not receiving people. A person, thinking that Buddha should be more compassionate about these things, might criticize about his perception, but at its core, there's no such a sort of comparison in value, because there's different perceptions you can take, as long as they are kusala perceptions. Sometimes you take, it depends on your situation and your inclination. In similar fashion, one time, this is in Ichanangala, this happened in Ichanangala because it's only a couple of suttas actually, reported the same event in Anguttara, I think 6th and 7th or 7th and 8th. It appears like consecutive answer Navakas, Nipatas. Lord Buddha was, he was from Charika, I guess. He was stopped at Vichanangala, somewhere in the forest, where Nagasama or there was Ananda or someone reports that there were so many Brahmins actually wanted to see you, and they are here with gifts and all these sort of things. At least he hears them. And Lord Buddha doesn't want to see them. He says, I don't want to see them. May I not, be, accompanied with the lava sakkar, all this praise and gains and stuff. So he refuses to see them, and he finishes his statement by saying, I love to be alone. If I'm traveling alone, at least I can defecate, urinate without look around, he said. He said that. Because that's the freedom of seclusion. So, you see, this humanness, this character, these people. Something Mahakasapa being very fierce towards Ananda, sort of blasts at him, calling him as a boy. This boy doesn't know his limits. He calls Ananda because Ananda went Charaka with some monks, newly ordained disciples of Ananda. Some of them destroyed by their own Charaka. And usually, at least these days, when you ordain, it's recommended that you stay in one place, for some, because the stability, it gives the stability to you. I think maybe it's circumstantial or something. Ananda was Sotapama anyway, so I don't think that, he's sort of totally misread the situation, but somehow this happened, and there were customers actually admonished him. Because of you, some videos he actually they destroyed. And then Ananda says, "Oh yeah, my hair turns white, and still I can't escape from this, from the criticism of being called a boy by the Hasada." You see this. So it's in this Hasada Samyutta in the Sanataka. So you see, and Lord Buddha asked him at some point, Kasada, why don't you come and live with us? And because he was like a loner, he was living alone in the forest, practicing the tantas and everything. Well, I prefer to be alone, Bhante. Then Lord Buddha asked, actually, what's the point now? We're an arahant, right? So that's what he implies. He doesn't say that. What's the plus point you see living like this? That he said, he asked. And then Vakasana says, well, first of all, that's for the Dikta Dhamma Sukha Viharana. You can live peacefully, less complicated. And on top of that, there's an important term. Paschima Janayata Anukampa Pinsa. Like people come later, Paschima Janaya. People ordain later. Anukampa Pinsa means, like out of compassion for later people. That means that, he sets an example. Even as an arahant, he didn't give up for us. Things like that, keeping that higher standard. So you see, even Lord Buddha says this thing. He was, he was on the dana or something, and lay people, set a power there, like foot rack, power like that. And Lord Buddha sort of stops. He doesn't want to sort of tread on it. And when Ananda is with him, and he knew actually what Lord Buddha meant, and lay people were baffled. Why would he walk? And when Ananda says, Buddha thinks that Buddha doesn't do it because out of compassion for the later people. Because the later people will, because there will be a lot of respect because of the Lord Buddha, and it will go to their head. So that's a simple explanation. But eventually in the Vinaya you see there were occasions later on people did the same. The monks were not weren't into doing it. And this was brought up, and Lord Buddha says, okay, what was the occasion? And the monk says, the people were, they were aspiring for this auspiciousness. For our kusala, please do it, out of auspiciousness, do it. Then Lord Buddha says, okay, they say so, do it. So he allows it later on, hence, sometimes, we have the power. But original choice was, okay, let's keep it simple. So you see, this sort of different, so in the suttas you see more like it's not like a monolithic, sort of like a, සාංශ තියෙනවා ඊට පස්සේ මෙතනින් මේ පැත්තෙන් සරියු සාංශ වෙනදගෙන ඉන්නවා මොගලන් සාංශ වෙනදගෙන ඉන්නවා පිළිගොන්නේ ඒ වගේ අපිට හිතෙන්නේ that's how we think about Brahmins. It's not the case. There is this sort of flavor in their character. But that's called Vasana Guna. Whenever Mahakaspa had that sort of a fierceness at the beginning, since the beginning, you can see it in the suttas also. He received a special upasampada as well because he's kind of very high caste Brahmin Mahasara. So, you can see, he had this little aristocrat sort of sense. But he kind of, he broke it through, but he still has that little bit of fierceness. I don't think that he has any of that Brahmin perceptions, according to the Dhamma. But bit of that thing is left. So the tradition calls it Vasana Guna, the character of it. Which is again, so that is Saupadisesa. There is this Upadisesa, the remaining Upadis. That's also an example. Then eventually you give up everything. Now, as a side note, I couldn't help but tell you this, that Vipassana traditions, sometimes like the pure dry inside traditions, though, they also produce sort of attained people. And these attained people sometimes reportedly had kilesas. This sounds a little controversial, but I couldn't help but tell you this. So they are like little outliers, like anomalies. And these were more, these people were mostly dealt or explained by the same sort of exception of Vasana Guna. But I'm telling you now, if they have some kilesas, some raga, some more, that doesn't count as Vasana Guna. That is outright kilesas. So, but that, because if you open that floodgate, anything can go. So that is something we have to be careful, because you develop these things, you get the adhimana, Lord Buddha says adhimana, which you don't have the accurate sort of attainment yet, but you feel like you are Narayana. So we can surmise from this it's just an adhimana, it's not a Narayana, because he or she still has kilesas. So the Vasana Guna can be a little slippery slope. So just for your information. I think it's 4:30, so maybe I should stop. So yeah, thank you for coming once again. It's been a pleasure to share Dhamma with you all. Thanks to Lanka and Ajahn Brahm Society. This is still possible to come together and practice Dhamma. So I would like to thank for being here today once again, and wishing you good luck, best of health, and good luck with your practice. May you attain your Dhamma soon. Everyone, son. Abhivadana Sirisa Nishan Buddha Charno Chattaru Dhamma Vardanti Ayuvanno Sukhambala Ayurarogya Sampatti Sattva Sampatti Nevacha Atho Nibbana Sampatti